brute force. If it doesn't work, you're just not using enough. You're listening to SOFREP Radio, special operations military news, and straight talk with the guys in the community.
Another wonderful episode of SOFREP Radio. I am your host, Rad, and today I have a very cool guest who's reaching out to me from London. But before I introduce you to her, well, you already know who she is because you clicked on the link and the name is in there and you're like, let's watch this episode. But first, I got to tell you about the merch store, okay? So make sure you go to sofrep.com/merch. Go check out all of the branded goods. You know, we've got the coffee mugs, we've got the branded torch lights that you can go use around your home that say SOFREP on them, and some shirts. I mentioned the shirts, so thanks so much for purchasing those. We also have a book club, and that's sofrep.com/book-club. That's book-club. Now, to my listener that has listened for the last 5 or 6 years, thank you for being there. To the new listener out there, I want to welcome you to the program and welcome you to the SOFREP family. And I also want to welcome, without any further ado, Francelle White, who has written the book, The Paris Girl, and it is about her mother in the French Resistance. And I would like to welcome her all the way from London on our show this morning. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
You noticed
how with you.
You're very welcome. I was so excited to have you on. And you notice how I said good morning and you said good afternoon. That's because right now I'm filming this and it's 8 a.m. in Utah. And it's about what, 3 p.m. in
It's 3 p.m. here. Yeah. I've already been to the gym and I've done the cooking and everything else.
That's funny. And have you already had some tea today?
Sorry?
Have you had tea today?
No, not tea yet. It's only 3 o'clock. We don't have tea till 4.
Oh, 4 o'clock is tea time. Is that?
Well, about 4 o'clock, yeah.
Oh, so I've got you until about tea time. Perfect. Now, Anne, your publicist reached out and said, "Hey, Rad, we'd love to have Francelle on and talk about a Paris Girl." And the book Paris Girl, it's very captivating when I start reading it, and I realize that it's your mom.
Yes, it's my mother.
And that's like, you're like the daughter of the French Resistance.
Yeah, it's her story. It's her wartime story. She was an amazing person. But this part of her life is, which I've written about, was between the ages of 19 and 24, which is when she was in the resistance and probably lived through some of the most dangerous times of her life.
Yeah, the actual Gestapo, like she was living through the Gestapo and 1939 and 1940, she was working at the passport office trying to...
Well, that's the extraordinary thing. She was working at police headquarters when war was declared and the Germans marched into Paris. And when they marched into Paris, they took over police headquarters because obviously they became responsible for the police. And she had to stay there. She was a civil servant and she wasn't allowed to sort of resign, which she probably would have liked to have done. And it worked to her advantage. She stayed there for 4 years. She had to work with the Nazis who were there. And by working with them, she was able to fool them around a bit. And she was able to become a courier, type up an underground newspaper under their eyes without them noticing what she was doing. It was quite remarkable looking back on it.
She was just involved in all of the chatter going on, right? She's in the office. She's like in the police headquarters or police station of any facet, right? Where we didn't really have the internet, didn't have, radio communications, but she's in there listening to it all. That's right, over here, and so down the street over there. And so she's able to just capture all this intel.
Yes. So, well, I think her resistance work was separate to what she was doing at police headquarters. She was at police headquarters because she was responsible for issuing passports and ID cards to the people of Paris or the people who needed them.
Yeah, and it's a very detailed job as you talk about in the book, where there's just little things on the passports that they have to always be
small details.
Yeah, small little details. Because people are coming in and they're like, how long are you staying here? Are you here for 2 months, 3 months? What's your purpose?
Yes. But I think that was her cover because as the war progressed, kind of by 1940, late 1940, my uncle, who was her brother, started up an underground newspaper, and they needed somebody who would type up that newspaper. So they needed a kind of typewriter, and then they needed paper, they needed ink, they needed Roneo machines. Roneo machines were the machines, which were today's photocopying machines, to print out this newspaper that they had drawn up and that she typed up and then printed. And having done all that, they took it out into Paris and distributed it amongst the students mainly at that time.
Right, because here she is, 18, 19, 20 years old, right? And her circle of influence is a younger generation of her friends, right?
That's right. That's right.
And they see what's going on. They see the infestation of like fascism and communism coming in, and
yeah, like, they earmarked the students, they earmarked the youngsters, because they knew that they were young and they were the ones that they were trying to entice to join the resistance and join them. And also what her group were doing, as the war progressed, they were trying to get young men who were mainly students to escape France. And so they would arrange for their travel down to the Pyrenees in between France and Spain, and get them across the Pyrenees. And then they'd make their way to French North Africa, where they'd join up with the French army. So this was another very big part of the work that they were doing.
And then she became a mom with you, you know?
Yeah, she became a mom.
I mean, let's think about all of this for a second. Like the whole spectrum here, she lives through all of this, does all of what she does in your book, which we could talk about it all the time. I want my listener to go and get your book, right? It's going to be out there.
That's wonderful. It'd be great if they buy it. Yeah.
Yes. Buy the book and read about her mom. But her mom then became her mom, like, and had to deal with, raising a family and raising children.
Well, it's unusual what happened, because she was French. And at the end of the war, when the Americans and the British arrived in France, she started going out with the GIs and the British officers.
Sure.
And along the way, she met my father, who was British. So she married him and then came to England and left France behind.
Yeah, she's like, okay, time for a new life.
Yeah.
And what was your dad's? What was he? Was he military?
He was in the Royal Air Force at the time.
Oh, I see.
He was in the Royal Air Force. He served for 4 years in the Royal Air Force. He was in the Middle East first, and then he came back to Europe, and he was sent to France to arrange for the RAF, the logistics to leave France, not the aircraft, but all the land things that belong, trucks and things to leave France. But that's how they met, because of she'd been in the resistance. She was on the French embassy. On the British embassy list, and so when there was a party, she was invited to go to it, where my father was also.
Right, and then also your mom was kind of hanging out with socialites of the scene, and actors and playwrights, right? Did I read about that?
That was earlier on. That was
earlier on. But I mean, she did have this just ability to be all over.
She had an amazing life. I mean, she was living in central Paris. Her half sister was one of France's leading actresses at the time. Her brother-in-law was one of France's leading playwrights. So she had access to an awful lot of what was going on artistically in Paris at the time, apart from her resistance work and her work at police headquarters. Yeah, so it was quite an involved life. But she loved America. She loved America because after my father died in 1966, she took over his business. And she used to have to go to New York on business, and just loved her time there.
Jeez, just all over. And so your father passed away relatively young, huh?
He was 61, and
okay.
He was in art logistics. He had an art logistic company called Gander White, and she took it over from one day to the next. She was only 45, and one of the first things she had to do was go to the United States to talk to her clients who were in America. Yeah. And she just loved it, and they were so kind to her and helpful, and kept her going.
And just to kind of like talk about your book a little bit here, I'll read the press release out loud. So if you'll bear with me, the Paris girl, the young woman who outwitted the Nazis and became a World War II hero, by Francelle Bradford White. And, of course, that's who we're talking with is Francelle. So let me read these paragraphs here. In the dark days of World War II, as millions of people were suffering, a powerful resistance movement was being established in France. Citizens were starving. German soldiers patrolled the streets of Paris. French signs were replaced by their German equivalents, and the French flag was hidden away. It was during this time, as the Gestapo took control of Paris, that, is it Andrée Griotteray?
Yes. Yes.
Then,
Well done.
thank you. Then
Good
19,
French.
we
Oui.
would make a remarkable contribution to the war effort with a dazzling combination of bravery, modesty, and energy. She would go on to become one of the most highly decorated women of World War II. Her success in outwitting and fighting the Nazis knew no boundaries. The Paris Girl, written by Andrée's daughter Francelle, which we have, will be based upon her mother's journals written in detail throughout World War II from 1939 to 1945. So not only is this a fascinating glimpse into life during wartime through these vivid journal entries, but an examination of the character of bravery by one of the most decorated women of World War II for her role in defeating the Nazis. So what makes a resistance fighter? How does one become a fearless patriot? Is it genetics, language, presence of mind, being eccentric, having initiative? The book uses Andrée as a look into characteristics of someone waging a personal fight for the greater good with a combination of wit, cunning, bravery, and courage. Your mom is awesome. And I've learned to say that moms rock. I love my mom. And, and I know you love your mom, and this is your way of being able to put your mom out there and immortalize more of her in a book from your firsthand account of mom. She'd probably talk to you. She'd probably sing to you. She'd probably say little things to you that now that you're older, you pick up on.
Well, it's quite interesting what you're saying, because I grew up with the French resistance. I mean, right from being a very, very small child. And she would tell me anecdotes and stories, but I never really understood the bigger picture of what she was doing. And it was when she developed dementia, and I decided that I was going to write her wartime story, because I thought I would write this book and I would use it to raise money for dementia research and support.
Lovely.
So that's what happened. And when I started to write the book, obviously I had the anecdotes, I had the journals, the diaries, and I had several books which had been written about the war and the group by my uncle and his friends. But I still didn't understand the bigger picture. So I had to research it. I went to Paris. I went into the archives of police headquarters. I went into the archives of the Ministry of Defense, which explained exactly why she was so highly decorated. I went down to the Pyrenees, to the Chateau d'Orient, which was their center where they used to go to and take the intelligence to, from where it was taken over the mountains to the British and the American consulates in Spain, in Santander or Bilbao. So it was quite a journey writing this story, because, as I say, I had all these little stories which kind of I couldn't write a book with just a lot of hearsay stories. I needed the constructive backup to it. I mean, for example, she told me that she'd slept in a brothel one night, and she told me about that because she was annoyed at where I'd slept when I'd been in Mexico on a trip, and I slept somewhere where I was worried about mosquitoes, malaria carrying mosquitoes, and so she suddenly told me about having to sleep in a brothel. But I didn't understand why she'd had to sleep in a brothel during the war. I thought she slept in a brothel because the train got delayed. But it was much more than that. She was traveling from Paris down to the south of France, down to the Pyrenees, and the train got delayed and she had nowhere to go. So she went, as she told me, she went to the local police station, and they said to her, well, all the hotels are full, but we do have a safe house, which is a brothel, and you could go and stay there. And because she had police headquarters ID, and in France you always have ID on you, you still do to this day. She was able to say who she was, and she was looked after.
Right, and probably caringly too. Like, I understand the word brothel sounds so scary, but it's full of ladies inside the place that are going to be like, "Hi."
Yeah. But she didn't tell me everything, because I remember when she told me the story, I was only about 21, but I remembered it. Yeah,
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 right. And you're
yeah,
just you were a young woman right there at 21 listening to mom. And you're like mosquitoes, and she's like, back in my day, let me
yeah,
tell you, right?
yeah,
Now,
yeah,
the other crazy thing is like, let's put ourselves in the mindset of a 19-year-old girl who's working in the police department as a passport reception and meeting all these people. And now she's going down towards the Pyrenees, where they are obviously knowing that this is probably a crossing, right? People are trying to escape. So I'm sure the Gestapo has like set like a net of like, the trains coming through. It's like, why are you going to the Pyrenees, right? So your
well, they
mom,
didn't, no,
yeah.
they didn't, I mean, they couldn't be on top of what everybody was doing, obviously. And as far as she was concerned, they thought she was just somebody working at police headquarters. Because she was working at police headquarters, she had the advantage of being able to obtain Auschwitz. Auschwitz were permits to allow you to travel around France, which, unless you had a very good reason, you couldn't get them. But
I think,
because she was working at police headquarters, and she knew the Germans and the Nazis, she'd say, I want to go and see my aunt in the Pyrenees. She's not well or whatever. And she'd say, can I have a permit? And they'd say, yes, you can. Here you go. So that was unusual. So her position at police headquarters really helped her traveling around.
that
But
would be,
another,
that's what I was wondering, right? Because if you're just trying to wander around, like head that way on a train, there would probably be nets, like certain
yeah,
checkpoints, like, but she was already working. And so they were just like, oh, she has a pass. She's good to go.
yeah,
And oh, I love that. I
yeah.
love that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But one of the lovely stories that I love, again, it's an anecdote and it's never been written about anywhere. So it's what she told me, is that as time moved on, the group were working for the OSS, which is today's CIA.
Hmm.
And my uncle was parachuted blind into occupied France by an American an American Air Force aeroplane, and he was parachuted with a suitcase full of dollar notes. This is into the Pyrenees in an area called Orient, and also with a kind of bag full, which he had in his pocket, of gold coins, which was to be used for their what one would call wartime chest, so that they could bribe people, they could pay for their expenses. Anyway, she got all this money, which her job was to take it back to Paris. So my uncle was parachuted blind into occupied France. The money had to be got back to Paris, and the gold coins had to be sewn into a girdle so that if she was searched, nobody would find them. So if she had them in her handbag and someone searched her handbag or the dollar notes, they would have thought, well, what are you doing? So she wrapped all this around her. Now, this story was something she told me. It hasn't been written about in any books. It's just an anecdote, which happens
Wow.
to be true, because she joked about the fact that with one of the gold coins, which she tried to get into a girdle, she couldn't get into it. She couldn't get the gold coin into it. And so my uncle said to her, well, why don't you go and buy those shoes you so wanted? And so she went and bought the shoes, and we still have the shoes that she bought during the Second World War, courtesy of the OSS.
I love that. I love that.
So
Okay.
those are some of the anecdotes, yeah, which, yeah.
Did you ever wear them? Did you ever get them
No,
on?
I don't wear them.
Have you ever though? Were you ever a size to fit in your mom's shoes? Did you
No, I
ever?
decided not to. No, I've never
No,
worn them.
is that right? No,
Yeah.
no, no.
I
I
don't
just
know
want to.
why. I just haven't. I've worn her jewelry, but I haven't, not those shoes. I
You've
don't know
not tried
why.
on the ruby slippers, no? No, you haven't
No,
tried that,
no
no?
ruby slippers.
I just went and saw that last night with my family, The Wicked, and that was a really great, Wizard of Oz. And I'm just
Yeah,
thinking, oh, well, special shoes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think they
Holy,
sold for a lot of money, didn't they, Julie Garland's shoes?
so
The red
much.
shoes,
Yes.
they sold recently for, I think, millions. Yeah, it's
Millions, yes.
extraordinary.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
those ruby shoes. And what a great show. I do suggest going to see Wicked if you haven't seen the movie. It was really
All right.
entertaining. Yeah, it was
Okay, it's on
entertaining,
my
yes.
to-do list.
Yes, as well as buying your book, The Paris Girl. Okay, let's put it out there to my listener. It's gonna be out, and you can probably get it at any popular place, and especially local bookstores. If somebody local in your area is supplying the books, try to buy it from a local bookseller. That would be the first place I would recommend. The
It's
second would
on,
be
am I allowed to say
yeah,
who's
yeah. Go ahead.
distributed? I mean,
Yeah.
Barnes and Noble, I know, have it, and it's on Amazon. I don't know your shops very well. Walmart, I think it's at Walmart.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. You're
yeah,
probably at
yeah.
all. Have you made it to the airport yet? Are you at the
Oh, it would
airport?
be great if it was at the airport. That would be wonderful. I don't
Like
know.
at Heathrow or something where they're going
Oh,
through, you know,
that would be great.
a lady in red, virgin red, walking by, grabbing your book. You'll be
Yeah.
able to, maybe you'll be able to go in. So I talk to authors all the time, right? And so maybe you'll be able to go in and just sign a couple copies
Oh, that would be wonderful,
when you
wouldn't it?
sit there. Yeah,
I love meeting people who buy the book, because those who buy the book are so interesting, and they come and tell me all sorts of extraordinary stories, their wartime stories. A lot of them tend to be older, but they still tell me all sorts of stories about their parents and their grandparents, be they American, be they British, be they French. The French tend to be more reserved, but the Americans and the British are very open about things.
oh, I bet, right? Wow. So do you speak French as well?
I do speak French, yeah.
I need to learn that. I need to learn it
How?
more.
Because my mother was French, so that,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and I
Yes,
love that. Well, my
yeah.
ancestry is French. I'm
Oh,
very,
good.
yes, very much European right here. I
Yeah,
am. Yeah, very
yeah,
much. Yeah, I
yeah,
think I'm
yeah.
related to Louis the 14th.
Oh, that's good. That goes back a long way. Well, he did
Yes.
amazing things. He built Versailles, as you know.
Right,
Yeah, amazing man. Yeah.
right. And so I'm reading through your book. I'm like, wait a second here. I'm like, why do I feel so French?
Well, the book takes you through Paris an awful lot. It takes
Yes.
you to all the main places in Paris. It takes you past the Louvre. It takes you to police headquarters. It takes you to Notre Dame, which your future president, or your incoming president, has just been to.
Right.
It takes you along the river. It takes you down to the Pyrenees. It's very much a journey through France, through a resistance fighter, in the eyes of a resistance fighter.
And as I read it, as I was reading your book, it feels like it just kind of came to life in my head. And I'm just thinking about that as you're talking even more because, when I said I feel like I'm kind of French, more French, it's pulling something out of me as I'm reading
Yes.
it, almost like I'm able to see your mom walking down the street or like look over her shoulder or just whatever the case, like in the passport office, maybe walking with a clipboard because there was no technology of like cell phones, there was nothing, or the
Yeah.
typing, like
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
father-in-law was a typewriter guy in the 60s. And so
Okay.
when he went to Vietnam, it was very coveted that he as a US Marine got a typewriter. It's like, here's your gun, here's your
Yeah.
bayonet, and
Yeah.
typewriter.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he had to take that everywhere. Tick, 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 tick,
Yeah.
tick, tick, tick.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
fact, my dad called him a Remington Raider because he knew how to
Sorry, Remington.
Raider
Okay. Okay.
because the typewriter was called Remington.
Sounds
And
great.
so
Yeah.
and so he's a
Yeah.
Remington Raider,
Yeah.
and so your mom had a skill set to type.
Yes. Yes. I
And
mean,
that
I
wasn't
don't
just
know.
that wasn't
Yeah.
normal back then.
I suppose so, because by the time I was her age, the whole system had changed. I mean, we were into computers. We were into, I think, completely different. Yeah. Yeah.
Changing ribbons on the machine and just
Yeah.
pulling the letter
Yeah.
backs because it'd
Very
stick with the
old-fashioned
other.
way of doing it. Yeah, they have these things in museums. We don't have them anymore.
No, I still have my
Yeah.
dad's
So,
typewriter. Yes,
yeah.
yes. Oh yeah.
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 But one of the things that people have enjoyed about my book is the fact they say that the journals, which is she was writing about some of the things she did, and a lot of people have told me it's the journals that bring the story to life. You get a lot of historical novels, or you get a lot of history written by historians, but it's the diaries that really bring it to life. The fact that she says, "I can't tell you how much I hate the Germans. I wish they'd go away," and different things like that. Little inserts like
Or
that.
she talks to her journal. Well, we made it this far, journal. We made it into the police station, or we made it here, journal. Like she
Yeah,
will, she's like,
yeah,
today, I think there's a quote in there. It says, "War was declared." Just a
yeah.
very,
She describes on I think it was the 14th of June, 1940,
yeah,
how the Germans walked down the Champs-Élysées and marched into police headquarters. And she talks her diary entry that day is she said, "I've been so brave until now, and then I completely fell apart and I cried for 10 minutes. I cried solidly because it
yeah.
was so awful for them."
Yeah, and what a, and then there was a couple days where there's like maybe there was entries, but you just didn't put them in the book, right? It was like there's like a 3-day period where there was no entry of, I think it was like the 11th through the 14th of a certain time frame, and I was like, oh, I wonder why she did. So I'm captivated by her daily life. I'm like, wait, whoa, where's the days, these other days? There's like, you feel what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah. But she would say that a lot of living was very normal. Life was normal. You might have had the Nazis and they were awful and the situation was horrible, but life was normal. You just had to carry on in a normal way, and you went about your business. You went to work by bicycle, or you went on the metro, or you went on the bus, and life carried on. And the country was occupied, and when from time to time you just, I suppose, burst out crying and think, how is it ever going to finish?
there's so much of like how history seems to repeat itself in this world, and how you're saying we have to still live life and keep moving forward and not just let it drag us down, even though the situation may seem dire. We still have to keep
Yeah,
internally upbeat about it. And,
yeah, yeah.
boy, because we don't need history to keep repeating itself.
No, and it does, sadly, with what's going on in Europe at the moment with Ukraine. It's really
Yes.
history repeating itself. It's horrendous,
And here in the
absolutely
U.S.,
horrendous.
with our politicians just not seeing any agreement, like you
Mm,
got, they're just completely split. It's like, you
mm.
know, stop.
Yeah, it's
And you
sad.
and
It's very
Ukraine,
sad.
yeah,
Mm.
and England's definitely like, hey, we back everything going on with Ukraine. We're here for support for you, and I
Yeah,
also support them as well. So
yeah,
I don't want it to come to your shores. I don't want it to come to our shores, because it's just going to be, that's just it's late.
mm.
London's already had enough.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
went I went down to Southampton with a friend of mine and my wife a few years back, and we were looking at the Isle of Wight, and you could
yes,
see kind of like the coastline of France.
yes,
And then they were telling me the story about how back in the World War II time frame, the Luftwaffe, the Air Force, would fly over to do bombing raids and just indiscriminately bomb, right? Just drop
yeah,
bombs on lights or whatever they think they
yeah,
want,
yeah,
cities. But
yeah,
when they
yeah,
would fly back over Southampton, they would try to drop bombs on those lights, but they were
yeah,
ships. They were fake
yeah,
lights out in the water. They made a fake city. So I
yeah.
think, how many bombs are just all over that place, like just from all these previous conflicts, you
Yeah,
know?
it's horrendous, horrendous what people do to people. Yeah, and
What a beautiful country, though. I love England. I tell you what, I got to travel over there with my wife and go down the train to see my friends and go eat at the Mad Hatter. Holy cow, it was so good. I want
oh,
more.
good, oh, good. I'm pleased you like London, like I like the States. I love you. I love New York. It's so alive. I know you're in Utah, but I love it. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
yeah. It,
and staying in a
it's so
flat.
alive. It's
Oh
mm.
yeah, staying in East London and walking around at 3 a.m. trying to find fish and chips.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
put vinegar on my fish and chips, and somebody went like, "Ugh, you put vinegar on your fish and chips?" I'm like,
That's what
"Yeah."
they do. That's what they do.
I'm like,
Yes, yeah, pretty horrid.
"I do," yes. And they're big pieces too, East Side. And I like West Side. I walked all over Hyde Park, went all over the place. But I just think about all of the conflict that has happened through the ages in England.
Well, it's interesting you saying that because, and I refer to it in my book, but my mother before the war was sent to England to learn English, and she spent a year in England. And she, at the time, she came through Southampton, and then by train came up to Victoria. And one of the things she said that when she came back to England in 1945, she was devastated by what she saw in central London around
Oh,
Victoria Station because she'd left and it was a normal built up area. She came back in 1945 and everything was destroyed. And that must have had a huge impact on her. And well, I mean, obviously on everybody, but somebody who'd been away from it and then comes and sees it, absolutely, sort of
yeah.
risen. Yeah, yeah,
Like right now, let's talk about current events. I have friends that had business meetings in Kiev like 3.5 years ago. For some reason, I just didn't make the meeting, right? I wasn't like on the invite to fly out and have this nice Kiev, you know, soiree for 4 days that everybody else went to, a little jealous. But now today, my friend's like, Rad, it's
Yeah.
Ukraine's getting hit, you know.
Yeah.
Things that we
Yeah.
saw, that we went and traveled and saw, are devastated
Yes.
right now. And
Yes. Yes.
I'm not able to fathom that, because here I am sitting at my home with my fireplace on, and I'm not
It's
having
different, isn't it?
any
Yeah.
super missile blow up something randomly next door,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you know. And for your sweet mom, who's hardcore, okay, for being a socialite and being undercover and such a young age, you know, for her to go back and see it devastated, I'm sure there's a lot of PTSD, post-traumatic stress, that.
Yeah. Yes. 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 Yes.
And
I think everybody went through an awful lot, an
such
awful lot.
such a
You know.
violent situation. Yeah, such a war. I mean, it was such a war, like of a war, right? There was
Yeah.
more trench fighting and just like
Yeah.
brutality, and you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. It's unreal what people do to people. Mm.
yeah. Over what? Over
Yes.
what?
Yes, well,
Land?
the Germans, the Nazis wanting
Yeah,
to take over
exactly.
Europe, and the Russians wanting to be part of it. Yeah,
That worked out real well, didn't it, for Germany, huh? That really
yeah,
worked out well. They moved right into
yes,
Russia and surrounded
it,
themselves.
yeah, it did, it did. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Once they went into Russia, the Russians weren't going to have it, and they stopped it. But
Yeah,
it
they're
was
like,
very nasty when you think that 55 million people died during the Second World War. Yeah,
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 it's awful.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
awful, you know. And your mom had friends that were Jewish, you know, that were being hidden. There was families hiding them, and sh- Gestapo everywhere, and
yeah.
guards and people.
The Jewish situation was horrendous. I mean, that,
Horrendous.
there's nothing, and it must never be forgotten. And I think that, the younger people don't really take on board what it was about. I mean, obviously, I knew Jewish people who'd lost. I have Jewish friends who lost their parents and their grandparents, and now it's all kind of disappearing. That generation is completely gone, and you don't really hear about it firsthand. And we mustn't ever forget.
No.
It's just horrendous. And what happened in France to the Jewish people, what happened in Germany, what happened everywhere in Europe.
Around,
Just,
yeah, around, like they all just got tagged. You're it, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait, you're like there's a photo that really resonates about what happened. And there's so many photos, but it's a box of like wedding rings, right? And it's just like they would take them off of them before they would before they would execute them. They would take their wedding rings off of them, all the Jewish, and put them in a
yeah,
box. And
yeah,
the
yeah,
piles of shoes, like those right there, are so saddening, and the distance
yeah,
just. But
yeah,
why? What the hell? Why even? I mean, I'm so sorry to say that like that. It's like, you know, it's like unneeded.
yeah, 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 yeah. It's horrendous. Yeah.
Just
Um,
because somebody was just like, you know, I don't know, like freaking out in his room saying, I got to do this with my country and my army, and I'm freaking out. I got to go wiping other people off the earth. It's like, bro, calm down, man. Slap a
yeah,
glove
yeah,
across his face.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm talking about Hitler. I'm saying like that guy was nuts he was nuts. He was on all sorts of amphetamines.
I don't think he was nuts. I think he was evil. He was
That,
evil.
well,
And, and
yeah,
and the group of them, who were with him, they were evil as well. They weren't nuts. They were evil. They knew what they were doing.
they're like power drunk. They were
Yeah,
drunk on all of this power, and no one wanted to
yeah.
tell him he was wrong because they were eating off the same plate.
Yes, exactly. You're absolutely right. Yeah, yeah.
But they knew it was wrong.
Did
It,
they?
it was wrong.
Oh, of course it was wrong. But how did they see it? They knew what they were doing was what they wanted to do.
I
It's
don't know.
horrendous.
I don't think that like a Jewish 7-year-old has any threat
No,
to
of
me.
course not. I mean, yeah, absolutely horrendous.
Or some guy with a
Absolutely.
gun and a leather jacket. What's the threat from that 7-year-old or that 22-year-old? Or,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
really, you know, who's the one walking
yeah,
around with the guns?
yeah, yeah,
Who's the
yeah.
threat?
It's the most horrendous part of history.
Well, and that's why your mom was so like, this is not okay.
Mm, mm. Well, it wasn't okay for anyone.
Yeah, but I mean, like, not everyone was. Well, I mean, I guess the French resistance is, you know, try to like blend in and then disrupt from within, you know, so that no one kind of picks up on it, and that's the resistance right there, right? It's like, just resist the situation. But, you know, I'm sure that there was some scary looking leather wearing, whip holding dude that walked in front of your mom, and he was like, "Where are your papers?" At some
She had,
point.
I mean, one of the things in her diaries, she refers to a very close friend of hers who was only 22, and he just disappeared from one day to the next. You know, he decided he ought to get into the free zone. France was divided into the occupied zone and the free zone. And the free zone, you tended to be able to do a bit more what you wanted to do. You didn't have the Nazis quite on top of you. And he escaped to the free zone, but he still completely disappeared. This was a 23-year-old, one of her closest friends. And that was just one person of the people
Right.
she knew.
And you would think that even if,
And I think that would have left an awful legacy with her and with anybody who lived through it. Those people who knew Jewish people, who had friends who just
yes,
disappeared,
just
and she
disappeared.
would talk about that. And I didn't know very much about it because she didn't really talk about it. And I remember one day, I must have been in my late 20s, asking her about the Jewish situation, and she just looked at me and just went into a kind of trance, because it was something she just didn't want to be reminded of or talk about, because it was just so horrendous.
Yeah, it is. And I did read that in the book where her friend, he went to the free
Yeah,
zone, and
yeah,
but
and
to never be.
friends of my grandparents as well. I mean, my grandmother was a very sociable person. She loved people, but you know, when I knew her, she didn't have that many friends, and I think it was partly because a lot of them who were Jewish, and a lot of them just disappeared. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, it's awful. You know,
Mm,
like, you know, your best friend or someone that is a
mm,
really close friend, and
mm.
he's like, "I'm going to try to make escape," and then you don't ever hear from him again. You would think that they would try to reach out to a homie, like a good friend, you know, like, you know, uh, "Hey, Francelle, I made it. I'll reach out to you some other way later," you know, just just to be
Yeah.
gone, you know. And so here you are as a legacy of your mother, you know, powerful female with a pen, and, you know, able to write your book and put it out there for us to have to read, really just in the archives of the world's books now.
Well, I hope the readers enjoy the book. I mean, I've had a lot of feedback on it, and it's very interesting how people look at it. The historical bit in it was very difficult to write about. Some of it was very difficult to understand. The landings in French North Africa, for example. Um, the research in, I mean, just what my family was doing was difficult to comprehend, and how they lived compared to the way we live with freedom. We are
Right.
free, and I don't think we value our freedom enough. It's
No,
not
and
until you lose it that you really understand what you have.
it's
Mm.
true. Over here in the U.S., people are like, "Oh, you know, they're coming after our freedoms and this, that, and the other thing." There's a lot of like, "Oh, we got to protect." I'm like, "Look, if this is me being like oppressed as freedom, I guess I'm okay with it." All right.
Yeah,
If this is,
yeah,
if I'm
yeah,
oppressed somehow or in some
yes,
simulation and I don't know it, you know, okay, cool. I got a good.
yes,
I love my family. I have a
yes,
fireplace. I'm fortunate and I'm blessed. You know, I have a
yes,
podcast.
yes,
I can say what I
yes.
want. I mean,
Mm, mm,
same with you,
mm, mm.
right? And that's all I think anybody really wants, whether they're
We don't
here,
realize how lucky we are to be free and to live
right?
in a democracy.
Correct, right?
Mm.
Where your voice and my voice are equal.
Yeah, they're heard. Yeah, you can say what you want to say.
That's right. There's
Mm,
places where they're still oppressing women, even
mm,
over here in
mm.
the U.S., trying to like get involved with, you know, their rights. I tell people all the time, man, I can't make a human inside of me. I come from a woman. Like, hello, like, birthday should be the birth from the mom's day,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
somehow I
yeah,
get spoiled with the
yeah,
presents for being
yeah,
born.
yeah.
I'm like, I hope you see what I'm saying here, you know?
It's interesting what you're saying, because it made me think about this young Jewish man, her very close friend who she lost. And I think it's written in the book. She says that every year on his birthday, he used to give flowers to his mother to thank her for giving him birth.
That's right. You know what? And I
It's a
read
lovely
that,
thing. Yeah,
and
you
I
did read it.
resonate with that.
Yeah,
Okay, because
yeah,
I'm of the
yeah,
same thought
yeah,
process that, Mom, where do I start? You know,
yeah,
how do I tell you I love you? You know,
yeah.
etc.
Well,
It's
that's
like,
very nice. Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
you know, and
yeah,
so, and I hope that others that listen to this will at least take some of this back and go, and if your mom is still around, go give her a call, you know, and say I love you.
yeah.
That's the
Yeah, well, I
best
think
thing.
that's a lovely thing to say. It's a very lovely thing to
Yes,
say. Yes.
yes, you know,
Tell the youngsters to call their parents. They don't
yeah.
appreciate us enough.
There's just three words we want to hear in public from our kids, and that's I love you. Go
Yes,
ahead and
I
be
know.
embarrassed. Go ahead
Yeah,
and blush
yeah,
about it. Go
yeah.
ahead, say it. Say it to me in public. Maybe I'll buy you what you want. Oh wait,
Yes,
my
yes.
son loves me. Go ahead and give him the new car. He said he loves me. that's
Yeah,
that's as a father, that's what I'm after, right? And I got
yes,
daughters, and
yes,
I want
yes,
my
yes.
daughters to see this interview and be like, hey, we can be her. We can write a book. You know, we can
Yeah,
watch our dad go to audition for Broadway and maybe get rejected, but at
yeah,
least he's trying.
yeah, yeah.
You know, we have to be the role models for our kids. Look at you
Yes.
being so brave and so
Mm,
awesome for your son, right?
mm,
Who we got to
mm,
meet, who helped you get all
mm.
this put together, right? And
Yes. They're very long-suffering children, I think.
wait till he gets your diary and writes your book.
Exactly. Exactly.
The year was 1969 and it was the summer of love. Mom, I had to stop reading your diary. What's going on?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Oh my. Now I have to ask you, with it being such a vivid book and, you know, coming to life off the pages when you're reading it, has anybody approached you about like turning this into some type of like a theatrical or a, you know, or a movie or a TV
Yeah, yeah.
show?
Well, there is an audio version, which my publishers in America, Kensington Books, have kindly organized. And yes, of course, I'd love it to become a film because if it turned into a film, I'd make serious money for dementia research. So
Yes.
that would be very, very good. Yes,
Yes.
and it has the makings of a film. It's an amazing story. It is an interesting story. It's a different story. It's a different story to typical resistance fighters' story because she was working at police headquarters, and that's a difference.
Right.
I think that was a big difference to most resistance fighters. And also the fact that they were trying to get youngsters out of France to join the army, which I don't think a lot of the resistance groups were doing. That was not part of their agenda. They got 1,000 young men out of France through the Pyrenees who went through Spain and made their way to French Algeria and joined up the army. And this is when my uncle was recruited out of the French army into the OSS because the OSS wanted youngsters who would work for them as intelligence gatherers in France. So that is when he was recruited by the OSS, and then he was dropped blind into occupied France with these dollar notes with him and the gold coins to carry on his wartime effort.
Just him, just his story alone of, all right, you're the chosen guy, you're the uncle. We could meet your mom in the movie, but his own getting the gold to her
Yeah,
is its
yeah.
own
Yeah,
holy
yeah,
cow.
yeah, yeah. It's well, it was there were several of them in the group. I mean, it was a group of there were 15 of them who were recognized by de Gaulle at the end of the war as having been in the resistance, and he integrated them at the end of the war into the French army. And the reason he integrated them into the French army was so that they could be given back pay for having been in the armed forces. I mean, it's the most extraordinary thing. I gave a talk in London, and there was a general in the audience who was just in fits of laughter. How do you give people back pay and pull them into the army 5 years after they joined? It's a lovely story. But yeah, it is. I mean, I reread the book today again because I knew I was talking to you, and it does cover very many aspects. It covers the relationship of my uncle and my mother with the overseas strategic services, which is very interesting to the Americans because the Americans didn't have many agents in France because France was supposedly intelligence-wise a territory of the British intelligence services. So that was an unusual situation. And my uncle, who was called Andrée Griotteray, was the first foreign journalist working for the Figaro to be interviewed, or who was able to interview President Reagan when he became president. And I can't remember the name of the chap who was in charge of the chap who was in charge of the CIA at the time was a chap called William Casey, and he organised the meeting. So it was all things
Wow.
within things, yeah.
Yeah, and there's so much, and I would love to see this come to the screen, the big
Yeah,
screen.
well, so would I.
Yes,
Yeah,
and if you're listening and you happen to have the means to get this done, you should check out this book and
that would
give
be
it a
great.
read. Yes,
Yes,
and
yes,
then
yes,
reach out and get
yes. It
Francelle's.
does make it's a good story because there are so many aspects to it.
It
So
could be a
many aspects to
series.
it.
It could be like a series. You could have you could binge 16 episodes.
Yes, yes, it could work that way as well. Yeah,
Oh yeah, because
yeah,
I just want to see your mom kind of being your mom in the passports and I can see it already, like someone who
yeah,
like all
yeah,
of if there's a film company in Hollywood that wants to recreate all of the gear of the police officers and have
yeah,
that on them and all of the
yeah,
set dressing and that whole period, man,
yeah, yeah,
what a show to be a part of. That would be so
yeah,
cool. And you
yeah.
have to be in it. You have to have a cameo. You have to. Even like a regular, oh yes,
Yeah,
yes, you need to send this letter over to the Gestapo.
yeah. What the military people in the military in this country who've read the book is the chapter about when my mother was arrested by the Wehrmacht and subsequently interrogated by the Gestapo. And they loved that because they loved the sang-froid, the way she handled the people interviewing her or the people questioning her. And she just didn't put up with any nonsense. She wasn't going to be intimidated by them. She was a strong personality. She was young, and she just treated them with contempt. And she got away with it. And she basically told the Gestapo chap who'd been sent to interview her that he didn't know how to do his job, that he wasn't doing his job properly. And the reason, and she, as an explanation, she said, if you were doing your job properly, you would phone the senior officers at police headquarters, and you would find out what I did at police headquarters and how I'm not involved in any form of resistance. Um, that's a very good chapter.
You yourself have kind of followed along with medals in your mother, right? Talk about how your mother had medals on, and
Oh, yes,
they
yes.
were checking out her
Yeah.
medals. Okay.
Mm, mm, mm.
Okay, I put my hands in air quotes if you're listening to this. Her mom would wear her medals, and I think someone would get jealous about the medals because they were in the area of her
That's it.
bosom, in her bosom area, her cleavage, and she knew
Yeah.
what she was wearing, a low-cut dress, and she'd have her
Yeah,
medals
yeah.
on.
They went to a ball, and I don't know how it works in the United States, but in the UK, if you go to official evenings, you're allowed to wear your medals. And obviously, at the time, not many women had
No.
medals of that nature. And she was at an RAF. She was at an RAF ball with my father, and somebody in the RAF, an RAF officer, saw this medal, which is the courier, and was a bit surprised that she had it. And I think he was half looking at the medal and half looking at her.
That her, yes, exactly,
It's a
right?
good
And
story, but that's
I
how I first learnt
love
about the
it.
whole episode of what she'd done.
And
Yeah.
then you received an honor as well. Would you want to explain what that is from? Was it from the Queen or
Yeah,
how?
it was very nice. I was given what's called a British Empire Medal. I don't know how you compare it in America, but it was given to me by the Queen, and it was given to me for services to charity. So I've done a lot of fundraising in my life. I did a lot for cot death, babies who died within the first 3 or 4 months of
Oh,
birth.
so sorry.
I did
Yeah.
a lot of fundraising for that. And then I've done a lot of police work. I've done a lot of political work, and more recently, this raising money for dementia research and support. And so I don't know how it works in the United States, but in the UK, somebody puts you forward, they write reports on you, and it goes to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister at the time agreed to give me the award, and therefore he puts it forward to the Queen, who then signs it off and gives you the medal.
And
The last
congratulations.
Queen, sorry, Queen Elizabeth. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And I was at her jubilee, so it was a very
Yes, yes,
good time, right? That
yes,
was
yes,
yes, yes.
yes.
I love
Yes.
that. And we love
Yeah.
Duran also, okay? So
Yeah.
I just want to let you know, all right? And Pet
They're
Shop Boys,
wonderful.
okay?
Yeah.
Very, very much West End boys and West End girls,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Very East End boys. No, very
Yeah.
much. We
Yeah.
loved going over there. It
But
was a
it's
good
very
time.
interesting. It's very interesting you asking me about the medal because I don't know if it's because we're kind of more reserved in England, but people don't really often ask me about it. They know
Hmm.
about it, but they don't really ask why I got it. And yet, when I was in the United States on business last, when was it? In April, I was in San Francisco. One of our clients had looked me up and said, what was all that about? How did you get it? But
Yeah.
nobody would normally do that in England. It's unusual. They don't ask about it. I don't know why.
Well, maybe you should just wear it,
Oh,
to
you're not
your.
meant to. You're only allowed.
Oh,
There are strict conditions. The
is
Queen
that
has
right?
these conditions. Yeah, you're only meant to wear medals. It must be the same in the United States. You can only wear medals at certain functions. So they have to be official functions. So I
Well,
wouldn't wear it in the street.
in the US. So when I went over to England a few times and I would see all my SAS friends and all these other blokes, if you will, in their suits all proper, and they'd have like a big rack of their ribbons, but they've been retired. Over here, we don't really have that. They don't, the former
No,
military, they don't really
no.
wear anything to social events like that. For
All
example,
right.
I just did a social event for a huge military charity, and everybody was just kind of like in tuxes, but nobody had like, except for the guy that won the Medal of Honor. He was
Yes,
wearing that on
yes,
stage to kind of signify he had earned that, right?
yeah,
Or yeah, and was awarded. But when I went over there, I thought it was so cool that if you wore them on one side, it means you earned them, right?
yeah, exactly.
But you could represent
Yeah,
like your husband on the
yes,
other side
yes.
with the medals.
Well, it's quite interesting you saying that because I got all my parents' medals, which I think I can wear on that side, and then
Yes.
mine, which is very, very insignificant compared to theirs.
I love that. I love that.
Very insignificant.
And also like, right here I have this as a remembering. I have the poppy right here. You see like the little
Oh, yes, the
poppy.
poppy. Oh,
This
yeah.
this is a Royal Irish Regiment. It was given
Yes,
to me
yes,
by.
it's very special wearing that. Very special.
Oh yeah, this is a gift by a friend of mine over in
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
just keep it by me. Give it a kiss there. Put it
It's a
right here.
one. It's a wonderful charity. It raises money for the military.
I wish we still did that over here.
Mm,
We had
mm.
back in the day, we used to have the poppy. There would be Veterans
Oh,
Day,
oh, did
Remembrance
you?
Day. Yeah, in the
Yeah.
U.S. they would have the. I looked it up. I was like, how come England has the poppy everywhere? Every time I go over there, I've been over there a few times, and it's always around Remembrance Day. And I've
Yes.
done
Yes.
special events, and
Yes.
everybody's got so many poppies, and they're at the airport. You can get
Yeah.
them. You put
Yeah.
a couple
Yeah.
bucks in the
Yeah, it's
bucket,
very
and you.
clever at raising money. Yeah,
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 and I'm
it's
like,
very
how come
clever.
we stopped wearing it in the U.S.? And I'm like, bring the poppy back.
Yeah, I wonder why. I wonder why you did. Yes,
It just kind
yes,
of it fizzled out, is what
yeah,
I
yeah,
learned from reading about it one time.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I still wear it. I have a beret that I wear, and I have it on
Oh,
it.
good. Oh,
you
good.
know, and I just want to say, I've had you for just about an hour of your time, and I know we're across the pond and across the world talking to each other. And this is the first time you and I have ever met, and I want to show
Yes,
people that you can have a totally normal conversation with another human being on this earth after just meeting them.
yes, yes. It's been lovely chatting to you. Really interesting. And
Yeah,
and it
right.
is, as you say, it's strange that you're so far away. Yeah,
Yes, but
yeah,
yet here we are. Like when I get on an airplane and I fly over there, I just close the window on the plane and then I open it up and I guess I'm there.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
is
yeah,
it a
yeah.
simulation? I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, 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 yeah. No, we're
It's
very
like,
lucky to be able to travel so freely because coming back to my mother, she'd been in England, as I said, for a year before the war. But then, come the war, she wasn't able to travel. So for 5 years, she couldn't go across the channel. I mean, now you just go to Paris, at the drop of a hat. But
yeah,
at that
right.
time, at the time, you couldn't because it was very expensive anyway. But during the war, you couldn't travel, you couldn't go anywhere. So yeah, yeah,
I
we
was,
we don't value our freedom enough.
no, no. I think I do, but I don't think I do enough.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm just born into the situation, as
yeah,
an American, right? There's people who
yeah,
come to this country that know more about this country than
yeah.
I know about my own country.
That's true. That's true.
And I'm honest
Mm.
about it, okay? the tests that somebody has to naturalize themselves to become a naturalized citizen here, the test, I would be scared to take.
Yeah. They know more about it. The people who naturalize know more
Yeah.
about the country than we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why are we like, why we
Yes.
should like, hello,
Yes.
okay? And they're so proud too. It's like, oh, the 13th law of the land is, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What is it?
Yeah.
What is it? What's the 13th? We just know the first and the second. What's the
Yeah.
third, fourth, fifth, 13th?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Tell you
Yeah.
what,
Yeah.
we need to appreciate what we have, don't we?
Yeah, we do. We need to. We're very lucky.
And friendships. So I want to appreciate this, okay? So you and I will be friends, and I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show today. And I want to talk about one more time the Paris girl, the young woman who outwitted the Nazis and became a World War II hero, which is out at all bookstores, Barnes and Noble. It's on the Amazon. It's probably at your local airport. And if not, just go there. Oh, you want to know a trick? Before I sign off, you want to know a trick I heard a really popular author do? He will take his book and take it to the airport, and it has a UPC number on the back of it. And he'll have one, and if there's not one there, he'll hand it to the lady or whoever's at the checkout, and they'll scan it, and it'll say like last one, and it'll make them reorder it.
Oh, good. Oh, that's wonderful.
Do you see that? Do you see how
Well,
that works?
Thank you very much for helping me promote the book. I really appreciate it hugely. It's my first book to be published in the United States, so it's very exciting.
Well, congratulations, and
Thank
congratulations to being a mom as well, and to your
Thank
family,
you.
okay, and your lovely pearl necklace, and you're lovely, okay? I just
Thank
want to
you.
let you know that.
Well, thank you so much.
I don't want to have to sign off, but I'm about to sign off. I want to say
Okay.
thank you to my listener for taking the time to hear mine and Francelle's discussion about her mother in the French Resistance and how powerful women are in this world. And you're always welcome back on the show. And if you ever get this into theaters or in a movie or a TV show, and if you ever need a long-bearded Viking Frenchman, you just let me know and I'll show up in that, okay? And you're awesome.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity of chatting to you and meeting you in particular.
Yes.
Really enjoyed it.
Same. And on behalf of Francelle White and myself here at SOFREP Radio and my producer Callum, who's over in London. Okay, why am I not in London right now? But anyways, if you're watching this during the holidays, happy holidays. And if not, go check out her book, everywhere books are sold. And this is Rad on behalf of Francelle saying peace.
Thank you.
You've been listening to SOFREP Radio.